Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, ships at sea, it is time for a new episode of Property of the Week with PropertyLens. As always, for those of you who don't know, my name is Bob Frady, co-founder and CEO of PropertyLens. With me, as always, is
John Sigmund, co-founder and president of PropertyLens.
So, John, we have a guest today.
We do.
A special guest. John, why do we have Jerome as a special guest today?
We have Jerome as a special guest today because Jerome is a property investor and uses PropertyLens reports to make better decisions about the properties he invests in.
So, Jerome, welcome to the show. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it being on.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
John has it in a nutshell. Real estate investor, just starting, but I do use PropertyLens a lot. Retired military, 20 years. Retired as a construction engineer technician, warrant officer for the engineer engineer regiment, excuse me. And then after that, transferred into corporate for a couple of years. Retired 2020, top of the pandemic. Not the best plan, but it worked out, But jumped into corporate for a couple of years, did some really nice things with the Army clients, a couple of Army clients. The latest one before I jumped out fully was to go around to installations worldwide and assess the infrastructure. So if the bases had to operate independently, if the worst should happen, are those systems redundant enough and sufficient enough so that they can operate independently? And then following that, corporate for about 2.5 years, 1,543 applications. I'll make sure that that's out there to the world. All said no. And so I got back to my business plan after graduating my master's in business and undergrad in project management. Got back to business of focusing on what I really wanted to do in life. And the world said, go back to your side hustle, which is now my primary, which is real estate investing. And I'm also a licensed realtor.
Oh, congratulations. So are you mostly investing, or are you also doing realty in conjunction, or how does it work for you?
It hasn't panned that way yet as far as the day-to-day operations of a realtor, no. I personally am not looking for that. I don't really look for leads or chase leads like most realtors. I know that's going to sound crazy to folks that's listening, but my main focus currently is real estate investing. Now, if I can help folks along the way, obviously, as a realtor, yes, I can do the day-to-day operations, help you buy and sell, as we all do.
So I learned something that I did not necessarily know, which is not all real estate agents are realtors.
Yes, that's true.
And now, as a realtor, what does that mean to the layperson in terms of a realtor versus a real estate agent?
The actual designation of a realtor means that you are a NAR member. And if you're not a NAR member, which I think most of us are, you do not get the designation of realtor behind your name. And that's really the nutshell behind it.
All right. So how'd you first come in contact with PropertyLens?
Funny enough, a broker friend of mine that I work with in Fort Worth, name is Alan. Hello, Alan. Put me on to PropertyLens. He says, hey, this is something you should probably take a look at. As we were getting things going, being a part of his team, it's something he had told me about. And I jumped head in, as I always do, and do my due diligence. And sure enough, it's a great product. You guys have done a great job. It's very effective and time efficient, I would say.
Well, thank you. How do you use it in your decision-making process?
For me, if I get said property that I'm thinking of moving on or doing my due diligence and, research behind it, this speeds up my process. So, I've had conversations with other folks that said, it's a third party vendor, sure. But I said, I don't use it solely as the only answer, It is a means of efficiency for me. Whatever is produced, I know that that's my benchmark. I know that me as an inspector or a former construction guy, and I'm, getting on with other contractors now. Here's what you should look at when I'll have you go look at this property, or we go look at it together, and then we go from there. But those benchmarks, that's bread and butter right there. That speeds up your process a lot faster than most.
It is always interesting when we talk about investors versus purchasers. What we'll call them is regular home buyers.
Yes.
It seems like the goal with regular home buyers is to get them to fall in love as quickly as possible and then make inappropriate decisions based upon being in love.
Yes.
Versus an investor's like, give me the money and let me figure out whether I can make this work. Is that
Thank
an
you.
accurate
Thank
assessment?
you. Finally, someone who sees it like I do, because I do this with lenders all the time. And I'm like, you see all the analytics in the business and analysis behind all this, and my numbers are not that shabby. So I'm pretty conservative. Just give me the money. You see, it's a great deal. You see it. We can make it work. Just give me the money.
So if we could do something better, or something additional that we're not doing, what do you think would be something that would add value for you?
For me, not so much. I would say for probably the day-to-day agents, those listing agents, those folks that are out there with buyers and your product or whomever is using it, say a listing agent, is upfront about the seller disclosure. It's all right here, and I would, as John had alluded to in some other conversations, I take that 10 times out of 10. This person, who's ever selling, is being completely forthcoming with what they know to be accurate about their property, whether they remember it or not. And I think that is a selling point of all selling points, regardless if you're a realtor or an investor.
Have you come across folks who suddenly remember something that you brought up after you mentioned, hey, I don't see a permit, or I don't, was there a prior damage or something that wasn't necessarily disclosed that became disclosed after the fact?
Not for me as an investor, let's just say, but in my due diligence, sure. Because a lot of these folks, especially wholesalers, they're putting out what they think is accurate. And for most part it is, but sellers are sellers. You're not going to remember what you did 10, 15 years ago, whether it was permitted or not, or things like that. But yeah, sure. I've had to call counties to double check things that I found on your websites, your platform. But with the day-to-day folks, I don't think so. Not too much. No.
Let's talk about how a real estate investor works, because a lot of our viewers are not real estate investors. Let's give a for instance, like, how do you find a property? What are you thinking about? When does PropertyLens come into the situation, if at all? How does it close? Give us a quick overview.
Sure. Most of mine I find either on MLS. I don't do a lot of MLS, but I look for off market. A lot of wholesalers have that. A lot of other websites out there have that. Sellers don't want to go through the wickets of the MLS, let's just say. So for me, as I wake up in the morning and I go through all my emails, I'll find a property that ARV is probably about 100 over what they're asking. After repair value is about 100 spread. That will intrigue me enough to start looking at it. Once I do some rough numbers and say, okay, this one looks like something I can do something with, then let me dig a little further. That's where you guys come in. And that's fast, because I used to call the counties. I used to, jump from this platform to this platform to this platform. And all of it says the same thing you guys are pushing, right? Some of the same things I see on Crexy or LoopNet and all the other platforms that are out there. They're not doing what you all are doing. And so it makes it, as I said, that much faster as an investor to analyze these properties and say yay or nay. Do I want to actually continue with this analysis, or nope, this one's done? 100-year, 500-year flood zones? Yeah, we're done. For me personally. For me personally.
Well, we were just looking at Zillow's decision to pull the climate data from their site. Now, first of all, First Street models, you can think whatever you want about them, and we're not necessarily huge fans. It's shocking to me how little people understand about some of these risks, because flood especially is not a forced disclosure in most.
No, it's not. It is not. Definitely not. Because I look at the Houston market, right? And that for certain is a flood zone. No matter how you slice it, wherever you're at, you're somewhere near one, or you're on the north side and away from it. So for sure.
We did a property in Houston. We analyzed a property in Houston down by the airport,
Okay.
and the flood had destroyed a whole bunch of properties right down the street.
Mm-hmm.
And so this property was in that flood zone, and nothing was disclosed about any of the damages that had been from that flood. And it's crazy.
I don't doubt it. Yeah, I don't doubt it at all. And that's probably why that market is moving the way it's moving. I don't know this for certain, but likely there's not a whole lot of disclosure going on about those flood zones.
Right. Yeah, it's digging up that stuff is not easy.
No, it's
in
not.
terms of prior damages. We spend a lot of cycles trying to pull all that information in, and you always miss some,
Mhm.
because even FEMA won't release the damages at the property level. They roll it up to protect privacy.
Right.
And that's their decision. But there's other sources that we can use to try to pull together all that information. So we do our best to try to get it. Have you come across situations where, okay, so you identified a property, you find the spread, and then flood's a deal breaker, but are there any other deal breakers that are in there or any other things that you see in a report that would make you lean one way or another?
Flood would be my biggest, I would say, followed by fire. But that's easy. It's a replaceable item. Okay. At a fire, the roof needs a full replacement. Okay. Rip the roof off and let's replace it. Not a big deal. Flood is a little different because there's secondary, tertiary effects that could affect that property years and years down the line. Not to mention it's still sitting in the flood zone as it moves.
You're looking at it. Flood is the big concern. Fire, you can deal with, but what other,
Big ticket?
concerning pieces and parts do you take a look at?
Foundation, definitely the age of the home, because radon is a big thing. I had to put a system in my Virginia home before I sold it. And some of the properties that I looked at quite recently, older homes, older properties, radon is not in there. And that is one thing that's the quiet killer that most people don't even think about. And I've got, inspection folks and those that have that as a business that bring those things to light. Me as a former inspector, same deal. Electrical, all the big ticket stuff, breathing, HVAC, the filtration system on a home, whether that's water or air. I look at those things, but that's way down the line. Big ticket though, for
Okay.
sure, is foundation, flood, fire, those type of things.
Okay. So when you're looking at the surroundings, what's the impact of the neighborhood, the exposures that it has from a peril standpoint, or crime factors, anything along those lines? How do those impact your decision?
So it's twofold, right? So if we're talking core realtor services, I'm not a legal professional. I cannot give you legal advice. I am not the police. I'm not a law enforcement. If you want to know about crime in a neighborhood, you have to go do your due diligence. But for me as an investor, sure, I look at some of that because a lot of these, especially those homes that are potentially available for HUD, let's just say, formerly known as Section 8, Choice Housing Voucher Program now. Those type of homes are typically in crime-ridden areas or marginalized areas, and I still would like to pick those up and help those folks in those areas. So is it a deal breaker that it's in a high crime area? No, because I come from a high crime area, poverty, let's just say, where that's prevalent. So it's not a deal breaker for me, but for the average home buyer or seller, then maybe.
Jerome, thank you so much for coming on to the show. We are so happy that you're a customer and love to learn more about what you're doing. How can people get in touch with you? If they're a wholesaler and they're looking for somebody to buy, how can they get in touch with you?
Usually I'm on LinkedIn. That's the best place to reach me. It's where John and I found each other. But if you really want to get a hold of me directly, you can hit me on my email, jeromehairston@purerealty.com. And that's the fastest way to get to me.
We had a great time. And if you're an investor or if you're just buying a house, don't take it from us. Take it from Jerome. Get a PropertyLens report.
Absolutely.
So for this week's episode of Property of the Week, I'm Bob Frady.
I'm John Sigmund.
Thank you to Jerome.
Thank you so much, guys.
Until next time.